એક રાખવા માટે છે યાર એવું કંઈક મારે પાસે ફોન છે પણ માં મળે નથી એનું ટ્રાય કરું છું ત્યાં સુધી અહીંયા બંધ કરી દેજો બચ્ચા લોકો આવે તો બંધ કરી અને ટેકાવે બીજા કોઈનો મોબાઈલ રાખજો મને મારો મોબાઈલ પછી ચાલ જેનો મોબાઈલ ફ્રી હોય ને hello Nick.
Yes, Dr. Shah.
Yeah, so we are about to start.
Oh, yeah, no, almost. You're waiting for a few people to join in. Right now we're at 122.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just giving them a few minutes to
Right.
log
Okay,
in.
right. So I'm going to finish within let's say less than 1 hour. Okay, is it okay?
Yeah, yeah, that is fine.
Around 45 minutes to 50 minutes
Yeah,
would be
45 to
the
50 minutes is fine. And then maybe another 15 to 20 minutes for question and answer.
right. Fine, perfect. That is fine. Link મોકલાવી છે.
So we are also broadcasting live on Facebook. So welcome everyone. We're currently waiting for a few more people to join in. But thank you for attending the webinar. We will be joined, part of the panelists include Dr. Kere, who's the treasurer for KAPD, Dr. June, who is responsible for education, and Dr. Marcia, our secretary. She will be the MC for today's webinar session.
This looks good.
Yeah, now you look good. No, that's fine.
I just changed little settings in this thing.
Yeah, and there you are.
And there I am, and we have one more option of enable HD. So
Yeah.
if I think if I go HD, it will be even more brighter. Let me check. Is
Yeah.
it? Oh, this is
Yeah,
perfect. I think
there
this is
you
perfect.
go.
Right.
Initially, you were looking like amalgam. Now you look like composite.
Yes. But now it's good. Right.
All right, Dr. Mwasia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr.
So we're giving guys a few more minutes to log in. Welcome to today's webinar on pulpectomy. Thank you for attending to all the attendees from Kenya and from outside Kenya. Again, we'd like to remind each and every one of you that you're more than welcome to join the Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentists. It's open to everyone, to both undergraduate students, the postgraduate students, general dentists, of course, with interest in pediatric dentistry, and to the pediatric dentists out there. So today we have been joined by Dr. Milind Shah, all the way from India. He's a private practitioner in pediatric dentistry, runs an exclusively pediatric dental clinic. He's an author of many textbooks and a profound researcher. So we are very honored to have him host, to be our speaker today on the interesting topic of pulpectomy. So welcome, Dr. Shah, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentistry, for giving me this opportunity. Can we start, Nick?
Yes, you can start. You can go ahead.
The presentation visible to everyone? Must be visible,
Yes,
right?
it's quite, yeah, we can see Hujambo.
So, Hujambo, everyone, to all my friends and colleagues from Kenya and different parts of Africa, and namaste to all my Indian friends. Today we have joined here to discuss about a most important topic in pediatric dentistry, which is pulpectomy, which is basically pulp therapy is of two parts. One is pulpectomy, pulpotomy. They are broadly classified into these two aspects, apart from indirect pulp capping and direct pulp capping. So the basic difference between pulpectomy and pulpotomy, before beginning the presentation on pulpectomy, I would like to say is that pulpectomy means whenever the inflammation has reached the radicular pulp, we have to do pulpectomy. And when the inflammation is just limited to the coronal pulp, and when the bleeding can be controlled within the coronal pulp, we have to take the step of pulpotomy. So let's begin with the presentation of pulpectomy, and I'm going to show you a lot of my cases and all the tips and tricks which I apply in my day-to-day practice here. We'll just have a small discussion regarding what are the indications and a few theoretical aspects before we move on to the clinical aspects of pulpectomy. So, why pulpectomy is needed? First of all, the same reason why any milk teeth is important in the oral cavity. It is you got a list of indications, and what are the advantages of saving the milk teeth in the mouth. It is to help the child in mastication, to prevent certain speech problems. Both functional as well as aesthetic purpose is being served if it is an anterior teeth or if it is a molar teeth. It also helps to prevent any habits or any psychological effects, and most importantly it is going to help as a natural space maintainer, and it helps to prevent any malalignment or shift in the path of the succedaneous tooth which is going to come in the oral cavity. The next step is the next I'm going to discuss is what is the definition of pulpectomy. As I already discussed, pulpectomy in basic terms means to extirpate the entire pulp, be it a vital pulp or a necrotic pulp from the root canals, followed by filling with absorbable material inside the canal. This is the basic definition of pulpectomy. Now, why it is called as a partial pulpectomy is that because of the tortuous morphology of root canals in primary teeth, we may not be able to extirpate the entire pulp, ideally speaking. That is why all the pulpectomy that we do is basically called as a partial pulpectomy, because it is next to impossible to extirpate the entire pulp tissue from the tortuous root canals of primary molars. Then coming to the indication and contraindication. See, this is the first step, and it is the most important step, is to do a proper case selection. You should be able to differentiate between which is the case for pulpectomy and which is the case for pulpotomy, right? So, for example, when a child comes to you and if they give the history that my child has not slept entire night, or he's having spontaneous pain, or he's having a past history of pain or repeated episodes of pain for which the child has already taken painkillers, analgesic medications 2 or 3 times before, and he has come to you. So all these are the indications that the inflammation has reached the radicular pulp, and it may go to for pulpectomy. But the final decision you have to make it clinically when you do the access opening, and if you are not able to control the bleeding, then you have to do a pulpectomy procedure. So the major indication is that, as I just said, you just have to look at the type of bleeding. If there is a lot of bleeding and if the inflammation has reached the radicular pulp, then you have to do a pulpectomy procedure. In those cases where you are not able to control bleeding from the coronal pulp, if you are able to control bleeding from the coronal pulp, then you can do a pulpotomy procedure depending upon the history and the other radiological indications. The next step is that even in a non-vital teeth, when there is a necrotic pulp, you can do a pulpectomy procedure, provided there is not much bone resorption in the furcation area, right? So you always have to check the X-ray. The tooth might look good in clinically in the mouth, but if in the X-ray if it is showing a lot of resorption, then it is not a good option to do a pulpectomy procedure. I am going to share few X-rays. I'm going to show. The another indication is when the child comes to you with an extraoral swelling. If the child is very young, for example, let's say 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years of age, and he's got an extraoral swelling in relation to because of deep caries in a molar tooth, then you have to take an X-ray, and if the X-ray gives you a indication, if it is indicated, then you have to do a pulpectomy procedure, because the tooth over here is non-vital, so you cannot do a pulpotomy procedure. The other indications are any teeth, again, as I said, if it has got a poor chance of vital pulp treatment, vital pulp therapy, if it is of a strategic importance for space maintenance. Now, what does this mean, a strategic importance for space maintenance? If the tooth is, one second. For example, when we talk about second primary molars, before the eruption of the first permanent molar, now these teeth are of very much strategic importance, because you cannot extract those second primary molars before the eruption of 6, because then the 6 is going to drift and it is going to cause loss of space. So in a situation where you can save the molar, you always have to save the second primary molar. But as I said, if there is a lot of resorption, if the resorption is more than 1/3, and if there is a lot of bone loss mobility, then you cannot save, and you have to extract and give a distal shoe maintainer. So those were the indications. Now coming to the major contraindication, as you can see, if there is lot of root resorption, if the root resorption is more than 1/3 of the tooth, it's called as a pathologic root resorption, then you cannot do a pulpectomy procedure in such a case, even though the tooth looks very good clinically inside the patient's mouth. But once you take the x-ray, it might show a totally different picture. As you can see, both the x-rays over here, the other one where clinically, without taking the x-ray, you see the tooth structure is looking good enough, but once you take the x-ray and you see the amount of bone loss which is there, the focal area, then these cases are not a good cases for pulpectomy procedure, because they've got a very poor prognosis. Ideally they have to be extracted followed by space maintainer. One more case you can see, as you can see over here, the patient has got a very huge abscess in relation to the central incisor. Clinically the crown structure looks good, but once you take the x-ray, you can see the picture is totally different. Already the external resorption has been initiated, and it is not a good candidate for a pulpectomy, so ideally you have to extract such teeth. One more case, as you can see over here, the x-ray and the clinical, this was a child in which the patient had come with a huge extraoral swelling, and there was an abscess in relation to the lower first primary molar. As you can see, there is lot of furcation involvement. The radiolucency, which is extending from the furcation till the periapical region. So again, such cases, plus there was a lot of mobility. There was a grade 2 mobility with this teeth. So it is always better to remove such teeth, because they are not going to have a good prognosis. And our main aim is not to let the permanent molar get any harm because of the abscess in the primary molar. So the permanent molar should not be, premolar should not be affected at any cost. So for such cases, you have to extract, because you always have to look the X-ray and you have to see how much furcation involvement and bone loss is there. There are a few other contraindications as well. The first one I have already discussed. If the periradicular involvement is already extending up till the permanent tooth bud, you have to extract such molars. As I said already, the pathologic root resorption is, if it is more than 1/3 of the root, then you have to again extract. You also have to consider the age of the child. But if the resorption is more than 1/3, then the prognosis of pulpectomy is not good in such cases. If there is excessive internal resorption, or if there is a furcation involvement in cases. So this was regarding the case selection. So that is the most important and a vital criteria before you start with any case. Now coming to the step of pulpectomy, the first step is you put a local anesthesia and apply the rubber dam. You have to start with that. There are only two basic points that you have to remember while you do the access cavity preparation. The first and the most important one is to obtain a straight line access, the same as it is considered in a permanent tooth root canal treatment. And the second one is to conserve as much tooth structure as possible, right? So these two are the basic criteria for an access opening. Why straight line access is very important? Because as you can see in the image, if you don't remove this portion of the tooth, then there are chances that your file may not reach till the apex, and you may fall short of the biomechanical preparation, and you may create a ledge over there, which is again going to cause you a lot of difficulty for the file to reach the apex. So this is the importance of having a straight line access. As you can see in this image, once you've created the straight line access, your K file or any rotary file is going to reach properly till the apex. So after getting a proper after doing a proper access opening, the next step is to do the pulp extirpation, which is again a very vital step in any pulpectomy procedure. Now, make one thing clear is that whenever there is a vital case, hyperemic pulp, always try your best that you can that the pulp should be extirpated in toto, because once if the pulp is extirpated in toto, then your half of the job is done. Let's see, even more than half of the job is done of the pulpectomy if you're able to extirpate the pulp in toto. So how do you extirpate the pulp? I personally, in my clinical practice, use either a barb broach or an H file. You can select a barb broach which gets engaged properly with some amount of resistance inside the canal, and you just have to rotate it 360-degree and withdraw it. And there are chances that you can extirpate the entire pulp, because once you extirpate the entire pulp, your job becomes very easy. And also you can use H files, but you never rotate the H file vigorously inside the canal, because it can bind to the canals and it can separate. So while using H files, you have to be very careful that you cannot rotate it vigorously inside the canal, right? You always have to press it laterally and you have to remove it. As you can see in the images, these are how the pulp, because the young children, for the age of 3 years, 4 years, 4.5 years, they've got very huge pulp chamber, very large pulp chamber, and there are very good chance that you can extirpate the pulp entirely in toto. So after the pulp extirpation, the next step is to determine the working length. Again, a step wherein many general dentists, I can say, they can create a mistake over here, because you have to follow a very basic criteria over here. As you can see clearly in the image, never put the file inside the child's mouth and take x-ray. This is very harmful, and it can cause trouble, right? So never put so many files inside the mouth. So this is not accepted. Either you can use a tactile sensation, or you can just measure the length of the canals in the pre-operative x-ray, or the best one is to use apex locators. Lot of studies have been done and many articles have been published which say that use of apex locators gives you acceptable level of accuracy in measurement of root canal length in primary teeth. So always and always, if you are able to use, if you have an apex locator at your clinic, you always have to use an apex locator. Any apex locator about third generation
Nzuri sana, habari yako?
is going to
Niko
give you a
poa. Tunaenda Nelson Awori. Ah,
So apex locator is going to give you an acceptable level of accuracy. So there are two techniques. Either you measure the length of the canal in the pre-operative X-ray, that is going to give you an arbitrary measurement, and the second and the accurate measurement is with the help of an apex locator. But never put the files inside the child's mouth and take the X-ray. As it is mentioned in the Kennedy's Book of Operative Dentistry, Pediatric Operative Dentistry, that a diagnostic file radiograph is not needed to assess the root canal length. Visual comparison of file and root canal length on the preoperative X-ray is going to result in sufficient clinical accuracy, right? So it is clearly mentioned in the Book of Pediatric Operative Dentistry that even if you take the working length, measure it arbitrarily on the preoperative X-ray, you are going to be very close enough. So just a few tips while determining the working length. The first and the foremost point is that always remember we are dealing here with the primary teeth, and the primary teeth are going to resorb at some point of time. So they've got a dynamically shifting apex related to time. For example, once the child turns 8 years or 9 years, the physiologic resorption is already going to start at that age. And the position of the apex may not be exactly at the radiographic apex, because it is going to continuously shift once the child turns 8-year-old. Over instrumentation can always trigger foreign body reaction, leading to accelerated root resorption. The root will also resorb fast, and even the root canal filling material that you have placed inside is also going to get resorbed if you over instrument. So always make sure that you limit your preparation 1 mm less than the radiographic apex. That is the safest point to finish your preparation, because the moment you try to reach the radiographic apex, there are high chances that you will breach the apical barrier and you are going to trigger some amount of foreign body reaction, which is going to cause accelerated root resorption, and the primary tooth is going to exfoliate much before the age. So to be safe, always you have to be 1 millimeter short of radiographic apex while you prepare any canal in a primary molar or incisor. So that was about the working length, right? So next comes the biomechanical preparation. Basically, in a primary teeth, we do not want to enlarge the canals as a lot of our general practitioner colleagues prepare the permanent tooth with the help of protapers. They want to prepare it till F1, F2, or even sometimes F3. But in primary molars, our aim is not to enlarge the root canals, because already the tooth are very thin, the pulp is very wide, and the dentinal thickness is very less. So we don't want to enlarge the size of the canals more than that is required. It is commonly, it is an old axiom in endodontics that what you remove from the root canals is more important than what you place back. So our aim over here is to remove as much of necrotic pulp tissue from the root canal and irrigate it properly. So basically, in a primary molar, if you have to do a biomechanical preparation, there are two methods. Either you do it with the help of hand instrumentation, or you can do it with the help of rotary, which is going to conserve a lot of time in a primary tooth. For those who are well versed with hand instrumentation and who are comfortable with hand files, for them you can use K files starting from 15 to 40 number of K files, 21 length. Maximum preparation that you can do for a primary molar canal is up till size of 30, or in some cases, for example, the palatal canals of upper molars or the distal canal of lower molar, you may go up to 30 or 35 number. But at the max size, 30 number K file is going to be more than enough whenever you do the hand instrumentation. So once you start with the 15 number K file, see, you don't have to start with the 8 number or a 10 number K file when you are preparing doing a biomechanical preparation in a primary molar, because already the canals are very wide when you are dealing with very young patients. So the first file that easily reaches the apex could be even a 50 number or a 20 number file in some cases. Or for palatal canals, sometimes even the 25 number K file could be the first file that directly reaches the apex. So you have to try to save as much time as you can, and don't start with 10 number, 15 number, because you are unnecessarily wasting a lot of time. And one more important thing is to always tag hand files with the help of a dental floss whenever you do any biomechanical preparation in a primary molar. The next thing is the rotary, right? So there are a lot of rotary files which are available now in nowadays in the market for doing preparation. The advantages of those files is that the length of the file is only around 18 to 17 millimeter. So for children, sometimes when the mouth opening is not great, you can always use take the advantage of these files, because they are easily going to reach till the even the upper second molar, and those areas which the your normal 21 file may not reach properly, or it might reach with great difficulties. So there are many rotary files which are available now, but those who are those who are comfortable with protapers and profiles, for protapers you can limit your preparation up till S2 file, and for profiles which are 4%, which is the advisable taper for preparation of a primary molars, that is 4%. So profiles are again a very good option for those who are well versed with those two varieties of files. And coming to the pedo files, there are basically three very commonly used files. One is the Kido S file, the other one is Pro AF baby file, which I personally use, and the other one is the Prime Pedo rotary files. So all these files have got tapers which are well suited for primary tooth, and the most important point is that their length is only 17 to 18 millimeters. As I said, you avoid excessive cutting of primary dentine. You don't have to avoid you don't have to cut a lot of soft dentine through the lateral walls and over instrumentation, because whenever you are using rotary, you always have to be very careful that you don't breach the apical barrier. So this is just to show you how the pediatric rotary files look. This one is the Pro AF baby file. It comes in a set of 5 files starting from B1 to B5. So the B5 is the largest file, which is generally preferred for maxillary anteriors. Otherwise, most of the preparation, the majority of cases can be treated with file B1 and B2. So B1 is a 4% taper size 20, and B2 is 4% taper size 25. So maximum canals you can prepare with B1 and B2 in a pediatric case. So just the general consideration, as we have discussed already in the working length, that you always have to limit your preparation 1 mm short of the radiographic apex. So the same thing goes for the rotary preparation as well. You have to prepare the canals 1 mm short of working length, and preferably you always use a 4% taper for pediatric tooth. A 6% taper you can use in a palatal canal of upper molars or the distal canal of mandibular second molars, because you don't want to unnecessarily cut a lot of soft dentine in a primary tooth. The next step is the irrigation and medicaments. So after every file that you use inside the patient's mouth, you have to irrigate properly. The complex root canal architecture of primary molars can be debrided cannot be debrided alone by can only be debrided by chemomechanical means, and never alone with the just with the help of hand instruments or rotary instruments. So irrigation is a very important part of any root canal treatment, be it a primary teeth or a permanent teeth. So what generally I prefer using is sodium hypochlorite 2.5% is the main irrigating solution for a root canal in a primary teeth. But you have to make sure that you never inject sodium hypochlorite forcefully inside the canals. If you inject it forcefully, it can diffuse in the periapical area and it can lead to post-operative complications. So always make sure that never inject sodium hypochlorite forcefully inside the canals. The last irrigation solution can be 17% ETA because it helps in a removal of smear layer. Or when you are dealing with a necrotic tooth, you can use 2% chlorhexidine as your last irrigation solution, because it is effective against a lot of anaerobic bacteria and E. faecalis. So whenever you are dealing with a necrotic tooth, you may use a 2% chlorhexidine solution as your final irrigant. Now, this is the most important part of any root canal procedure, pulpectomy procedure which is obturation. There are a lot of obturating materials which are available in the market. So you have to select and you have to choose your obturating material wisely depending upon what is the age of the child and how is the tooth, whether the prognosis is good or no, whether the teeth has got an abscess or it is a vital teeth. So your obturating material is going to be dependent upon a lot of factors, because there are many materials which are available commonly in the market. But whichever they are divided is either your material is a hard setting material, that is a zinc oxide or endoflast, or your material is not hard setting, which is calcium hydroxide along with a combination of iodoform like Metapex, Vitapex, Diapex. So there are many materials with similar composition which are available. As I said, the the basic obturating all the obturating materials which are introduced nowadays in the market, they all have to be compared first with zinc oxide eugenol, because zinc oxide eugenol is old is good. But, the next one is Vitapex or Metapex. So these are nowadays used currently because they don't take a lot of time while obturating. You just have to inject it inside the canals and you are done with the obturation, right? So the basic difference of Metapex is that zinc oxide is a hard setting material and Vitapex is not a hard setting material. Metapercha is not used in primary teeth. Metapercha or silver is indicated because the primary teeth is going to resolve. Now you have to choose obturating material, for which case you have to use. As I said, zinc oxide eugenol is a hard setting material, and Vitapex, Metapex, and all those calcium hydroxide obturating hard setting material. So they are going to resorb at some point of time. The rate of resorption of Metapex and Vitapex is very fast as compared to zinc oxide eugenol. So in my practice, whenever I am dealing with a very young patient with a vital tooth, for example, if the child is 4 years, 3 years, or is less than 6 years, then we prefer to obturate it with zinc oxide eugenol, because we want the tooth to stay in the mouth for 5-6 more years. So we have to choose an obturating material which is going to stay inside the canals for that amount of time. Your Metapex and Vitapex are going to resorb very soon, so they cannot be inside the canal for so many years. I'm not saying that using Metapex and Vitapex is contraindicated for a child who is of a very young age, but I basically prefer to use zinc oxide or endofloss or any hard setting material in such a child, because you have to keep the tooth in the oral cavity for many years, right? The next is if the teeth is of a poor prognosis, or if the teeth tooth is having an abscess. Always for an abscess case, I prefer to use a material which is a combination of zinc, which is a combination of calcium hydroxide and iodoform, that is Metapex or Vitapex, because we want the abscess to get healed, right? And these materials are found to be very much effective for treating any case with an abscess. So whenever the case is with an abscess, we always prefer to use a material which is a combination of calcium hydroxide and iodoform. But for young patients with vital teeth, I prefer to use a zinc oxide eugenol. The only drawback of zinc oxide eugenol is that if it goes beyond the apex, then there are chances that it might hurt the primary, it might hurt the permanent tooth, or it might deflect. I'm going to talk about the disadvantages of zinc oxide eugenol and Metapex both in my coming slides, and a lot of my cases we are going to have a discussion about the cases. How do we go about different cases and the long-term follow-ups? So now coming to the method of obturation, right? So there are two basic materials that we have discussed. One is either a hard setting material, that is zinc oxide, or the other one is Metapex, Vitapex, or similar kind of a material. So if we are obturating with zinc oxide, what is the technique of obturation? Now, as it is mentioned in the textbooks also, the first step that you do for any zinc oxide, when you are obturating with zinc oxide, is to always coat the canals with a thin layer of thin consistency of zinc oxide, right? So first you have to mix the thin consistency of zinc oxide, and you have to coat the canals properly. The next step, what I do in my practice is that I mix the zinc oxide eugenol in a restorative consistency, and make very tiny small blocks or balls, as you can say, of zinc oxide eugenol, which are 1 millimeter in size. So as you can see in the image, these are very small, even 1 millimeter, or approximately 1 to 2 millimeter size of zinc oxide eugenol balls made of restorative consistency. And after coating the canals with a thin layer of ZOE, I just place these balls over the orifices, and we have to push with the help of a moist cotton pellet and press it with the help of a very thin probe or a plugger. And these tiny balls are going to get pushed inside the canals, because mind you, we are dealing with a primary teeth in a very young patient. The pulp chamber is very wide and the canals are also very large, so it is very easy for this zinc oxide to easily go inside the canals. You can always take an x-ray and check whether the zinc oxide, whether the obturation has reached till the apex or 1 millimeter short of the apex or no. Till you don't get a proper obturation, you can place few extra zinc oxide balls over the orifice, and you can again push it with the help of moist cotton pellet, right? So first step is to coat the canals with a thin layer of zinc oxide eugenol, and then you have to mix it in a restorative consistency, make these tiny balls, and you have to place it over each orifice and push it with the help of cotton pellet. And there you go, this is how the obturation is going to look after you do it with that technique. You are going to get the same radio opacity as you get with the help of calcium hydroxide plus iodoform based materials if you follow this technique, right? So I'm going to show you few of my observation, but this is a learning curve, right? You have to understand how much pressure you have to apply. So as you do few cases, you are going to judge, and you come to know how much pressure I have to apply to push this till the apex. Maybe in some cases you might go beyond the apex. It's not advisable to go beyond when you use outside eugenol. Maybe in the initial few cases you might go beyond that, but gradually you will understand how much pressure has to be applied for, right? So that go very perfect, because the canals are very broad. You can see in very young patients, the canals are very wide. So this material easily, if you make these tiny blocks of zinc oxide eugenol in restorative consistency, they are going to go easily till the apex. Because I have seen a lot of clinicians facing a difficulty to obturate with zinc oxide. They feel it is a very tedious procedure. I know that Metapex and Vitapex are very easy. Just within 2 minutes, you can obturate the canals. But as I said, zinc oxide eugenol being a hard setting material is always a better choice for such cases. So what are the disadvantages of zinc oxide eugenol? The resorption rate of zinc oxide eugenol is very slow. In some cases, it might resorb slow as compared to the root. That is why I always stress on the point that never try to push the that material. Zinc oxide eugenol should never go beyond the apex. On the contrary, Metapex and Vitapex, if it goes beyond the apex, it has found that
Hello, sorry, Doc. Sorry to interrupt you. We can't hear you.
hello,
You're not audible.
can you now?
A little bit better.
Hello, can you hear
And
me
then
now?
I think your hands free is also moving. We're getting a crackling sound.
Since when you are getting a crackling? Just right now or
Uh,
throughout?
Before it was on and off.
On and off. Okay, just 1 second.
Then maybe you can go back 2 slides.
Is it clear now?
Yeah, a bit better.
Bit better.
Just again, yeah, you're still faint.
Okay. 1 second. Not great. Hello.
It's still faint. You were better before. Just confirm the jack is completely engaged in the laptop.
Yeah. I'll remove it. Back again. Is it fine now?
Just speak
Same.
louder. It's still a little faint.
Right. So I'm going to speak little louder now. Is it fine? This much?
Yeah. Yes, that's fine.
If
Thank
I
you.
speak louder. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to show few of my obturations with zinc oxide eugenol. As you can see, is that I again stress on the point that you should always try that the zinc oxide does not go beyond the apex, because there are few drawbacks of this material. The first and foremost is that it may deflect the path of the permanent tooth if it goes beyond the apex. Because it is a hard setting material, always try that it does not go beyond the apex. And as I've said you that the resorption rate of zinc oxide eugenol is slightly slower as compared to the root. Also, if it goes beyond the apex, it may lead to certain hypoplastic spots on the permanent tooth. And because it contains eugenol, it acts as an irritant to the underlying tooth bud. So make sure that you do not over obturate with zinc oxide eugenol. Am I clear, Nick? Is the volume okay?
Yeah, the volume is fine.
It's fine, right? So these are the disadvantages of zinc oxide eugenol, right? So the bottom line is try and do not over obturate with zinc oxide eugenol. If you are short by 1 or 2 millimeters from the apex, that is still considered fine, but do not over obturate with zinc oxide eugenol. In the initial few days, you might have little difficulty with this technique, but gradually you'll be able to make out how much pressure exactly is required for you to push the material till the apex. You can do it once you make small balls of restorative consistency and place it over the orifice and push it with the help of a moist cotton pellet, right? So the next is coming to the obturation with Metapex, Vitapex, or any similar kind of a material like Diapex, which contains calcium hydroxide and iodoform. So what you have to do over here is that the technique is very simple. These are syringes which have got very thin tips, which you can easily engage inside the canal. So you have to insert those the tip of Metapex or Vitapex till it gets engaged in the canal, and you can disengage it slowly, and you have to push in the process. You have to push the material and disengage it in the canal by pulling back slightly, and you have to inject the material as you pull out, right? The tip need not reach the apex. So the technique of obturation with Metapex is very simple, and at the end you have to leave certain amount of material on the orifice. That is some excess amount of material that you can push with the help of a moist cotton pellet. The same way how you push zinc oxide eugenol restorative balls, the same way you can push this excess Metapex or Vitapex which you have to leave over the orifice, and they are going to reach till the apex. So this was the main two different types of obturation techniques. One was with zinc oxide eugenol and the other one was with calcium hydroxide based material. I hope you all are clear now. So let's move on to the some of the cases. So this is just a recap of what we have already discussed. So the first step is isolation. After you do a proper case selection, you have to isolate the tooth properly with the help of a rubber dam. Then comes access opening, and this is how it looks after a chemomechanical preparation. For a vital pulp, you have to make sure that you have extirpated entire pulp or the maximum amount of pulp, and you have to reach a point where there is no bleeding from the canals, right? So this is the point where you can stop your biomechanical preparation. Then comes obturation. So this is how it looks after you have obturated. So in this case, I had obturated with Metapex. So this is the pre-operative and the post-operative X-ray of my case. As you can see, always try and limit your obturation material within the canal. I am going to stress this point again and again throughout my presentation, because I am going to show you a lot of cases where what happens if the material goes beyond the apex. I'm going to show you a lot of follow-ups. So these are some of my cases with Metapex. Again, Vitapex is a similar kind of a material. I prefer to use Vitapex in place of Metapex, though the composition is same, but the handling properties of Vitapex is better comparatively in comparison to Metapex. So I prefer to use Vitapex now, because the tip of Vitapex is also very thin, and it never gets the material never gets blocked inside the tip, which I have noticed with Metapex. So I prefer to use Vitapex whenever I'm using a calcium hydroxide based material. So these are some of my observations with Metapex. Now this was the case wherein I am showing a 2.5 year follow-up, almost about 30 months. So this was how it looked in the pre-operative, and this is after I have obturated with a calcium hydroxide plus iodoform based material. As you can see, after 2.5 years, the follow-up X-ray shows that the material from inside the canal has resorbed, because I have used a calcium hydroxide based material over here, which is not a hard setting material. So just within a year or within a 1.5 year, you can see the material starts getting resorbed from inside the canal. That is why that is the difference between zinc oxide eugenol and Metapex. The zinc oxide eugenol will never resorb so early, but a calcium hydroxide based material is going to resorb very fast in such cases. You can see the tooth is very healthy because we have given a proper coronal seal, right? So crown is very important for after any pulpectomy procedure, and once you give a proper coronal seal, the chances of failure is very minimal. It is next to impossible that your case will fail. But as you can see, the material has resorbed, but still the tooth is doing good. It does not have any abscess, or there is no clinical complaint. Now coming to the techniques of pulpectomy, you always must have a doubt, most of the general practitioners, whether to do a pulpectomy in one visit or we have to do it in two visit. Now mind you that most of the canals in pediatric patients in primary tooth, we can do the pulpectomy procedure within one step, right? So these are few of the indications of pulpectomy procedure within one visit if you have to do. For all the vital cases and most of the non-vital cases, for example non-vital case where there is a small sinus opening on the buccal gingiva, all these cases you can do with the help of a single visit. If there is an inflamed vital pulp, or if there is an asymptomatic primary tooth without any acute symptoms such as cellulitis, so make sure if there is no extraoral swelling, if the patient presents with no extraoral swelling or a cellulitis, you can always finish your obturation within one in the same visit. Now this is these are the indications for a multi-visit pulpectomy procedure. If there is a presence of an acute abscess with or without associated cellulitis, or if there is a presence of an active and a persistent discharge from the root canal. So these are the main two indications where you should not obturate in the same visit. Now, how do you do how do you tackle a case when you have to do a multi-visit, right? So what I do in my practice is that whenever there is a case where I am not able to obturate in the same visit, I have to place a intracanal medicament for 1 week or 2 week before I call the patient, again for the next sitting, and I have to do the obturation. So what are those intracanal medicaments? There are various intracanal medicaments which are available in the market. I am personally comfortable using calcium hydroxide based intracanal medicaments. Just 1 second. Okay. So I am personally more comfortable using calcium hydroxide base. There are a lot of calcium hydroxide based intracanal medicaments which are available, or you can also use triple antibiotic paste, which is a combination of three antibiotics, that is ciprofloxacin, minocycline, and metronidazole in the combination of 1:1:1. You can mix it with either saline or propylene glycol, and you can place in the canal, right? And you have to recall the patient after 2 weeks before you can obturate. So whenever the patient presents with extraoral swelling, always make sure that you do not obturate on the same visit. That is what I personally practice in my clinic. Now we are going to discuss few of my cases. So this is one of the case which I have been following up for almost more than 4 years now. So this was the pre-operative state when the patient presented with a huge abscess. There were all the indications for me to extract this to the patient presented with extraoral swelling. There was this huge furcal radiolucency. There was even a mobility present. So there were all the indications for me to extract this tooth. But very early in my career, I thought of saving this tooth. Like, let's give one chance to for this tooth to survive. So I decided to finish the pulpectomy in two sittings. In the first sitting I had given a intracanal medicament with a water soluble calcium hydroxide paste, and I recalled the patient after 2 weeks and obturated with the help of Metapex. So this was the immediate post-operative X-ray of the patient, where you can see the metapex has gone beyond the apex because the patient presented with abscess, and then I restored it with the help of a zirconia preformed zirconia crown. Right. One thing you can notice in this case is that the child is already 5 years old, but the permanent the premolar, the succedaneous tooth seems to be missing at this age. The patient presented to me when he was around 5 or 5.5 years of age. So I recalled the patient, and you can see the X-ray after 1 year how the tooth looks like. Now there is no furcal radiolucency there, as you can see, and the premolar tooth bud has also started to appear. Right. In this case, as you can see, the premolar tooth bud has started to appear, and you can see the metapex which was there beyond the apex has also resorbed. Right. So next comes the 18-month follow-up of this same patient. So now you can see that the material has started to resorb from inside the canal as well. But as you can see now, the child does not present with any clinical symptoms. There is the X-ray also looks perfect. There is no radiolucency anywhere that you can see. Even the furcal radiolucency, there is a lot of bone formation there, no swelling, nothing at all. But the metapex from inside the canal has started to resorb. That is natural because it is a property of metapex, vitapex, or any calcium hydroxide based material to resorb from within the canal. So this was just after 1.5 years. Now you can see this is the X-ray after 2.5 years. The metapex from inside the canal has almost resolved. You can hardly see any metapex, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters within the coronal one third of the canal. You can see some metapex which is there, but the tooth is firm inside the oral cavity. Bone formation is there, and still there is no radiolucency or nothing at all. And the next is there comes a 3.5 year follow-up of the same case now. Again, you can see the lesion has healed, but the metapex is completely resolved. So there is no chance of a reinfection now because we have done a proper cleaning and shaping of the canals. And most important is that we have given a proper coronal seal with the help of a preformed crown in this patient. So we have eliminated all the possibility of a leakage or a reinfection in this case, right? So now you can see this was the condition when I started, and now you can see after 3.5 years, and the tooth is still perfectly fine inside the oral cavity. Am I clear, Nick? Is it okay?
Yeah, so far so good.
Good. So this was the child where I had treated the right side, lower right second primary molar. Now the same child had come to me with a similar complaint in the lower left second primary molar. As you can see the clinical picture, there is a huge abscess there. The patient also presented with an extraoral swelling. And once I took the X-ray, I could see a similar kind of a picture which was there on the right side of his oral cavity. Similar way, there is a lot of radiolucency in the furcal area, and I cannot see a permanent tooth bud as well. So I did the same way. I obturated in 2 sittings. In the second visit, I obturated with the help of Metapex. And as you can see, this is the immediate post-operative picture wherein the Metapex has gone beyond the apex. And this is just the 6 month follow-up of the same case, and you can see how well you are able to see the permanent tooth which is starting to develop in this case. And you can see the metapex which was there beyond the apex has resolved, right? So this is just 6 months. Now we can very well predict what is the future of this case. So this is after 1.5 years. You can see the metapex from within the canal has also slowly started to resolve. The premolar tooth bud is growing really well in this case. The lesion has healed completely. The same case, I have got a 2.5 year old, 2.5 year follow-up where you can see the lesion has healed. The metapex is resorbing, but the tooth is still doing fine because we have placed a preformed crown and we have done a proper cleaning and shaping, right? So this is the advantage of using a calcium hydroxide plus iodoform based material. That is why you have to use this material in cases of abscess because they've got a very good chance to heal the abscess, right? Similar cases I can show you. So whenever there is an abscess, so this was the case where the patient again presented with abscess and extraoral swelling. So in the first visit, as I discussed, we do the access opening, we do biomechanical preparation. I place intracanal dressing with the help of water-soluble calcium hydroxide paste, and I've temporized it with zinc oxide eugenol. Just within 2 weeks, you can see the lesion has healed properly, and the child does not have any mobility or any pain. Again, a similar case I have obturated with Vitapex. You can see just within 6 months. This is a pre-operative condition wherein you can see there's a furcal radiolucency. Also, there is some amount of radiolucency in the periapical area. So this was the immediate post-op wherein the Vitapex has gone beyond the apex, but just within 6 months, as you can see, how well the periapical and the furcal area have healed within 6 months. This is the beauty of these materials. But I'm going to stress again and again that you have to have a proper coronal seal for these materials to give you a good success rate. And one more thing which I'm going to discuss is that as you can notice, although all the cases, wherever the material has gone beyond the apex in any case which I have shown the follow-ups, whenever you push the material beyond the apex or it goes inadvertently beyond the apex, there are very high chances that the material is going to get resorbed very soon from within the canal. But whenever the material is not over obturated, and whenever you limit your obturation within the canal, what I have noticed in my practice is that the rate of resorption of these materials in the follow-up visit is very less compared to those cases where the material has gone beyond the apex, right? So this is just to show you one case where this is 18-month follow-up of a pulpectomy procedure with the anterior case where I have placed 4 preformed zirconia crowns. This is the 18-month follow-up. As you can see, the material from within the canal has still not resorbed at that pace as you have seen in other cases, right? So this is the clinical picture of the same child after 1.5 years, right? So still the material is within the canal. If you limit your obturation within the canal, it is going to be there within the canal for many months compared to when the obturation goes beyond the apex. If you take the follow-up X-ray after a year, 1.5 year or 2 years, you are going to see that the material is going to resolve very soon within the canal, and in some cases even the root is going to get resolved very fast. So this is just to show you a few of my cases with metapex obturation. This is the post-operative. So what I have discussed here is that such cases, you carefully see this obturation. Whenever the obturation obturating material or whichever obturating material I am using, if it is there within the canals within and it is not going beyond the apex, then the tooth is in it for a long run. So such cases you can see the resorption of material is also going to be less in the follow-up visits, and also the resorption of the root is also going to be less in the follow-up visits if your obturating material you are limiting it within the canal and if it is not pushed beyond the apex. I'm going to show you many cases now again. So this was the case of an abscess where you can see the material has gone beyond the apex now, because metapex and vitapex sometimes you cannot have control over these materials when you are pushing it, because most of the times if there is an abscess, the apical barrier might have been breached by you, or there might also be some amount of pathological resorption that would have started which is not visible on a radiograph. So the material can go beyond the apex. So for this case, as you can see, if the material has gone beyond the apex, this is the 1 year follow-up. As you can see, the entire material which is beyond the apex is resorbed now. So this is the rate with which the material is going to get resorbed. Even the material beyond the apex gets resorbed, and slowly and gradually the material which is within the canal is also going to get resorbed if it goes beyond the apex, right? So the radiographic appearance is not going to look very good for such cases where it goes beyond the apex. This is again one of my cases where as you can see in the palatal canal, there was a lot of extrusion. Also in the distal canal, the metapex or the vitapex had gone beyond the apex. So this is just after 3 months. You see, imagine within 3 months the material gets resolved beyond the apex, right? So this is the rate with which the material gets resolved. Why it is getting resolved very soon? Because one reason could be that because there is an over obturation, right? If there wouldn't have been any over obturation, there were high chances that the material would have stayed within the canal for a lot of time. Now, as you can see, one more case, right? So there is again, I have obturated with Vitapex in this case, and as you can see, because the patient had abscess, the Metapex has gone beyond the apex. The Vitapex has gone beyond the apex in this case. So just after 1 year, you see the entire Vitapex which was there beyond has got resolved, and even the Vitapex which is within the root has started to resolve, and moreover, I see that even the root has started to resolve. And this is the follow-up after 2 years, the same case. As you can see, almost the entire material started to resorb from within the canal. Even the root has resorbed, but the tooth is doing fine clinically. This is the clinical picture after 2 years. There is no abscess, no mobility, nothing at all. So clinically this tooth is looking fine, but I cannot say the same thing radiographically. I have restored it with the help of a preformed zirconia crown in this case. So this is just to show you that whenever the obturation material goes beyond the apex, there are chances that your teeth is going to get resorbed at a slightly faster rate as compared to the opposing or the other tooth, right? So it is just to stress that always limit your obturation within the canal. Even though metapex and vitapex does not harm the permanent teeth if it goes beyond the apex. If it goes beyond the apex, it is not going to harm the permanent teeth. But these are the drawbacks, that it is going to resorb very fast, and even it may cause a slightly faster rate of root resorption if it goes beyond the apex, because it initiates a foreign body reaction which might trigger the cascade of inflammation, and it results in faster root resorption. So this property of metapex and vitapex, wherein they get resorbed within the canal after a few months, it is called as a hollow tube phenomenon, right? So how you can avoid this? The basic this thing rule is that always make sure that before you obturate with these materials or any material, you should always, the canal should be dry. If the canals are dry, then there are high chances that the material is going to stay within the canal. So always dry your canals properly with the help of paper point before you obturate. Otherwise, you are going to end up with this. So this is just within 2 years, you can see the entire material gets resorbed from within the canal, which is called as a hollow tube phenomenon. One practice which I follow in my clinic is that whenever I obturate it with a Metapex, Vitapex, or any non-setting, non-hard setting material, I make sure that I place a very thin layer of pre-mixed zinc oxide usinol over it before I restore it with the help of a high-strength GIC followed by stainless steel crown, because this zinc oxide is going to act as a barrier. It is going to act as a hard setting layer over the Metapex. So this is one thing which I follow in my practice nowadays. But at the end, what matters is a good coronal seal. If you are placing a stainless steel crown over it, then there are very less chances of failure. So again, this is just to show you a follow up, as I'm stressing again and again. So this was a case report which was published in Journal of Pediatric Dentistry, wherein you can see the this was obturated with the help of a Vitapex, both the lateral incisors, and it had gone beyond the apex. In the follow-up visits, as you can see, this is a follow-up after 38 months, which is more than 3 years. There is no material which you can see within the canals, right? So by chance, if such patients, if they go to some other dentist and they take an X-ray, they can say that, oh, the previous dentist has not done any root canal, right? So they may have that impression, but you can see clinically, and clinically there is no problem with this tooth. There is no pathogenesis. The clinically patient is doing very fine. This is just to show you that even if the material gets resolved within the canal, if you are given a proper coronal seal, the success rate with these materials is very good, right? Now coming to the success rate of pulpectomy, as I have been saying repeatedly again and again, pulpectomies that are filled short or up till the root apex have got a significantly greater success. There's a very nice article which is published in Journal of Pediatric Dentistry, which is said. So always try to limit your biomechanical preparation, your working length, your obturation should always be either it is till the apex or it is 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter short of the apex. But try and not over obturate with any material that you are using, because it can lead to faster rate of resorption of the material as well as the root. So in the end, I can just give you a few take-home message for all the general practitioners who want to practice, pediatric dentistry, which is that working length should always be zero point 0.5, 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter short of radiographic apex. By doing this, you are very safe and you are not going to breach the apex and you are not going to trigger any kind of foreign body reaction. By doing that, you are avoiding any over instrumentation, so you are not going to get any over obturation. So always avoid over instrumentation and over obturation. I say it again that even if you over obturate with Metapex or Vitapex, it is not going to harm the permanent tooth bud, but the resorption is going to be very fast if you over obturate. So always avoid over instrumentation and over obturation. And in my practice, what I follow is that I always try to prefer extracting the first primary molars which have got very huge abscess in children above the age of 6 years, where the first permanent molars have erupted, because cases with very huge abscess, especially lower D's, they've not got a very good prognosis. There are chances that after 1 or 2 years, the child might come back to you with a repeated abscess. So I prefer, if the child is about 6 years of age, say 7, 8 years of age, when the lower D has got a huge abscess radiographically, and clinically if he's presenting with an extraoral swelling, I prefer to extract it followed by a space maintainer, and always maintain proper follow-up and proper documentation of all your x-rays that you do in the clinic. Right, so that was the take home message which I have which you can follow it in your clinic. This is a small place where I practice here in Mumbai, India. This is how I distract my the children. They watch the TV and they get distracted, right? At the end, I would like to thank Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentists, Dr. Nick, for inviting me, for having me here, and giving me an opportunity to present the topic which is very close to my heart. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentists, and thank you to all the attendees and participants from all over Kenya, Africa, and India who have taken out time to listen. You can always reach me out, and if you have got any doubts, you can always contact me. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. That was a wonderful presentation. We highly appreciate your tips and tricks, especially the obturation with the little tiny balls of zinc oxide eugenol. I've never encountered that before. So
Yeah.
definitely I will be trying that. And it's good that you emphasize that for good success rate, a good coronal seal, it's usually very important to do a stainless steel crown, whether you've done, especially when you've done pulp therapy, either pulpotomy or pulpectomy, which was today's topic. So we'll go straight to the question and answers. We have a question. I think there's a little confusion. So this question asks, doesn't calcium hydroxide cause root resorption when used as an obturation material?
This is a very nice question. Basically, calcium hydroxide, when we have studied that calcium hydroxide causes root resorption, but when it comes in contact with a vital pulp, then it is going to cause root resorption, right? So if you are using calcium hydroxide for a direct pulp capping or for a pulpotomy, then there are chances that it is going to resorb the root. But for a pulpectomy procedure, we are removing the entire pulp, so there is very less chance that the calcium hydroxide is going to come directly in contact with the vital pulp. So in that terms, when we are using it for a pulpectomy procedure, calcium hydroxide is not going to cause the resorption of the root. But if you are placing calcium hydroxide using it for a direct pulp capping or for a pulpotomy procedure, then it can cause root resorption, but not for a pulpectomy procedure, because we are removing the entire pulp over here. Did I clear the doubt?
Yeah, I think that's there's always that confusion of, we are advised never to apply calcium hydroxide on pulp, but yeah, in pulpectomy there's no pulp.
Yeah, yes, because we are removing the pulp. Yeah, yes, exactly, Dr. Nick, right.
So the other question is, how reliable are apex locators in the use for working length determination, and what is the cost implication, maybe in dollars or in rupees, in your setup?
For apex locators, as I said, there are a lot of studies that have been done. As I have quoted one meta-analysis and a lot of randomized controlled trials as well. So any apex locator above third generation, right, working on a dual frequency, maybe a root ZX apex locator or any other apex locator, Propex, Rapex, all they've got a very good acceptable level of accuracy for primary root. Even if there is an open apex, they are going to give you an very close to an accurate level of accuracy when you do the biomechanical preparation. But always before using the apex locator, you can always measure the approximate length on a preoperative X-ray. Plus, you also have got your tactile sense, which you can always reconfirm what working length. And in terms of the costing in India, the apex locators which are available, they cost around in the Indian currency they cost around 50,000 rupees if you are going for a JW Morita apex locator, or even the good apex locators which are going to give you an accurate levels is around 30,000 rupees, Indian rupees, if you know if you can calculate in dollars. So that is, but it is a one-time investment. So always it is going to help you for even your in your practice for a permanent root canals for adult patients, and it is going to help you. But as I said, even if you take the approximate working length on an X-ray and you continue further, it is going to give you an acceptable level of accuracy. And apex locator is just an added advantage that you can have in your practice to get more accurate.
Okay. So you mentioned that you get the tiny balls of zinc oxide eugenol and you try and plug them into the canals. You mentioned using a moist cotton wool pellet. So the question is, what do we wet the cotton wool with? Do you use normal saline? Do you use eugenol?
No, you can use normal saline. Normal saline is good. You can use normal saline to push it, right? So those balls should be very thin balls, right? So you can place one ball over each orifice and you can push it with the help of a moist cotton pellet. Then again, you can put one more ball over each orifice and again you can push it. So maybe 2 or 3 balls in each orifice and you can get a good observation. I forgot to mention this one point, but the questions was what you have to moist. This should be the saline. Saline you can use. That is a good solution to moist it.
When you referred to the triple antibiotic paste, you said there's a ratio of 1 to 1 to 1. Could you kindly re-emphasize the ratio of the drugs that are used?
The drugs which are used is ciprofloxacin, metronidazole, and doxycycline. So these are the three drugs which are used, and you have to mix it in the concentration of 1:1:1. There are two different schools of thought. One says that you can mix it in the concentration of 3:1:1, but 1:1:1 gives you a very good consistency. So you have to mix it the powder, and you have to mix it with the help of a normal saline or propylene glycol, and you have to carry it in the root canal with the help of files or pluggers, and you can push it the same way as you place any intracanal medicament. So the three drugs are ciprofloxacin, metronidazole, and doxycycline, mixed in concentration of 1:1:1 for cases which have got abscess.
And now in the second visit, how do you clean the canals? Are they easily rinsed out?
You can easily rinse it with saline. It is going to come out, or you can use some H file to scrape the intracanal medicament from the canals, followed by rinsing it properly with the help of saline. So your saline helps a lot, right? So once you rinse it properly with saline, then you can flush out most of the intracanal medicament which is there inside. So this is just a simple way to remove the material from within the canal.
Okay, so there's a question here. Which is your, or rather, which restorative material is suitable for restoring the tooth before you place a crown?
I personally use completed.
Sorry, you prefer?
I personally use a high strength GIC, the glass ionomer cement by GC before I place a stainless steel crown. So you can use any GIC over your obturation, followed by a stainless steel crown, right? So this is what I personally use in my practice, a GIC.
Okay, so no need for composite.
Because I'm placing a stainless steel crown, GIC is going to, it's going to save a lot of time, right? So you can also use a light cure GIC, which is going to immediately set, and you can immediately place a stainless steel crown just within 5 minutes over it. So you can use a light cure GIC as well, because I'm giving a stainless steel crown. Maybe for few of our general dentist friend who may not be well versed with stainless steel crown, and if the access cavity is a class 1 access cavity, probably they can initial days they can use composite till they don't try to regularly place a stainless steel crown. So for such cases, composite has got a better strength as compared to GIC. But personally, because I give stainless steel crown for all my pulpectomy treated cases, I use a GIC before placing a crown.
For a highly uncooperative child, can you get away with a zinc oxide eugenol and then a stainless steel crown? Or
So
you
over
still
here,
do the GIC?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Nick?
For a highly uncooperative child, where you need to finish your restoration as quick as possible, can you get away with just zinc oxide eugenol and then put a crown on top, or you have to do GIC as well and then the crown?
There are the studies have said it, and even in some pediatric books, it is mentioned that they restore it with the help of temporary zinc oxide eugenol cement, followed by a stainless steel crown. So for a highly uncooperative child, I guess that could be okay, because we are placing a stainless steel crown, right? So stainless steel crown is the very important step over here. So for a highly uncooperative child, that is acceptable, but you have to place a crown at the end.
Okay. Are there any studies that show instead of using triple antibiotic that maybe augmentin can be used instead?
See, there are a lot of combination of antibiotics that they have tried. What I mentioned, and there is a lot of evidence for triple antibiotic paste. That is why I commonly use that. But even the double antibiotic paste they have suggested, there are few. So depending upon the evidence, you can use these different combination of antibiotics. but it is always, you can use a plain calcium hydroxide, water soluble aqueous calcium hydroxide. You can place it in the canal for one visit. There are a lot of materials which are available in syringe form, which are radio opaque, like calcitin, ultracal, or you can use all these materials. But as you asked me for regarding antibiotic, triple antibiotic paste has got a lot of evidence, and personally I would advise to use that combination, because that is what there's a lot of evidence is there.
Now, what happens and what's the management protocol for a patient where you've done a satisfactory obturation, a pulpectomy was done well, has been restored with a stainless steel crown, but you get a recurrent abscess. What do we do next?
So I have had my share of failures as well, and few cases have been. So most of these cases which come with recurrent abscess, they already had abscess at the start when we have treated. So if they are coming back again with the abscess, you have to again assess that what is the age of the child at that time. You have to take an X-ray and you see what is the position of the permanent tooth at that point of time. So if the child is already reached the age of 9 years or 10 years, we are at a very safe end of our this thing. So it is, so in such cases, if the child is getting an abscess, then it is better to extract the teeth at that time, and we can justify it by saying that the permanent teeth is coming very soon in such cases. So we can at that time we can extract the case. But if you follow the proper protocol, then there are, case selection is very important. So those cases which has got lot of abscess, and lot of abscess and mobility, or for example lot of D's, I'm not saving these nowadays in my practice with abscess, especially if the patient is above 6 years. So it is better to extract such cases beforehand only, right? So you select proper case. That is the rule.
From your observation, have you noticed any cases where if you over obturate with Metapex, that it causes swelling and sometimes an abscess? And why does this happen?
I have not come across a case where where there is a swelling because of Metapex. There can be post-operative pain for a couple of days, which is subsided with the help of antibiotics. But there's no swelling which I have encountered. The swelling may be because of, probably because of the hypochlorite which is used, or it might have been used very vigorously. It might have gone beyond the apex, because it causes a lot of irritation. So maybe because of the irrigation, it could happen, but not because of Metapex, because Metapex and Vitapex are generally well suited to the body, and I have not encountered with that. Maybe because of irrigation, that is what I feel, not because of the Metapex.
Okay. We've had a few questions with regards to this. So maybe could you explain why we prefer using zinc oxide powder mixed with saline as opposed to zinc oxide powder mixed with eugenol?
Come again, like why we have to use, you are asking me? Or
Yeah, why do we mix the powder with normal saline as opposed to with eugenol, like you would when you're making a temporary filling?
see, the ideal way to mix, you mix zinc oxide with the help of eugenol when we are obturating. But
Yeah.
make sure that it does not go beyond the apex for such cases, because eugenol acts as a irritant. But what evidence has is suggests that that is the way to obturate, and it gives you a long term success if it is not going beyond the apex. Probably you mix zinc oxide with saline to negate the drawback of eugenol, which is a irritant. But in my practice for obturating, I always mix zinc oxide with the help of eugenol, and I try and not go beyond the apex with zinc oxide, because it has got a lot of antibacterial properties as well. That is a advantage of eugenol, apart from its disadvantage of being an irritant.
Also, of course, I think in our school of thought, they say that it's harder to resorb when you mix it with eugenol because it's usually reinforced.
Yeah, it is harder to resorb. It is a very hard setting material. That is why I personally use zinc oxide usually in very young patients. If you can see my cases, now, if the patient is below 5 years, probably 4 years or 5 years. Then I will 3 years, 3.5 years. Then I will try to obturate with zinc oxide, because the tooth is going to be in the mouth for 6, 7 years. But if
Mhm.
the patient is above 5 years, say 6 years or 7 years or above that, then I always obturate with Vitapex in my practice. Now I've almost stopped using Metapex. So most of the cases I am obturating with Vitapex now if the patient is above 5 years of age, and it has given me good success, as you can see. But
And
it is good to know that you are using zinc oxide you mix with saline. So that is one thing which I can explore. We can explore over here.
from your experience, how do you manage children with special healthcare needs or children who are very uncooperative that require pulpectomy? Do you
Uh,
sedate? Do you put them? Do you do procedures under GA? Do you
yeah.
restrain?
So over here, we do lot of procedures under general anesthesia. If we have to do, if all the indications are there for GA, if the child requires a full mouth rehabilitation, and if there is a lot of treatment to be done, if the child is not cooperating, then we put the child under GA, because that is the safest way to treat. If you take all the precautions properly, and you can do all the treatment within one visit, so it's going to save a lot of time as well, and you can give your best to that child. In our practice, we also restrain the child sometimes, but not for these longer procedures, probably for extraction or a small procedure, maybe fluoride application or silver diamine fluoride application. We can restrain the child, or we can mildly sedate them with the help of different oral sedation methods. But if we have to do a longer procedure like a pulpectomy or a full mouth rehabilitation, let's say 4 or 5 root canals in a child, then I always prefer to put the child under general anesthesia and do entire treatment within one go. So that is my way of working, especially for children with special needs, because we want to give them the best, which we cannot give them, if we are restraining them over there. Otherwise, for all other children, we treat them with all the behavior management techniques, with distraction, with parental separation, with voice modulation, and all these things for every children. But for special children and for the children where GA is indicated, we always put them under GA and complete the entire treatment within one visit.
And what if the tooth requires a two-stage visit and you're taking the child under GA? What happens? Do you leave
It
the
is
triple and
always safer to extract.
okay?
So
So that's
for
in
such
a,
cases, we always extract. If there is an abscess, if there is a huge abscess, if the patient had an extraoral swelling,
mm,
then it is always safe to extract. We always explain the pros and cons to the parents, before I'm going to decide the final treatment plan. But in my opinion, it is always safe to extract such cases. I always see what is the age of the child. We can determine your, depending upon the clinical situation at that time. But it is always safer to extract such a tooth under general anesthesia. So extraction and space maintenance is also one of the very good treatment option, which is a very, there is no chance of failure for this treatment, because at the end we want the permanent tooth to erupt properly. Because if you plan for a two visit, or let's say, for such a child, if there is a recurrent abscess in this case, then it is very difficult to put the child again, second time general anesthesia. So it is better that we do a treatment for which we don't have to touch that tooth again in the entire life of that tooth. So try and extract such teeth.
so I'll combine two questions. So the first question is what should be done if you find that zinc oxide eugenol has gone beyond the apex? And the second question is, if iodoform has also gone beyond the apex, does it cause discoloration of the permanent tooth beneath?
See, zinc oxide, if it goes beyond the apex, there is nothing much that you can do. You just have to wait and you have to pray, because there is nothing much you can do. It is not that for every case when the zinc oxide goes beyond the apex, it is going to harm the permanent tooth, or it is going to deflect each and every permanent tooth wherever it goes beyond the apex. but there is nothing much you can do once it goes beyond. You just have to wait, because at the end, even zinc oxide is going to slowly get resorbed within the tooth as well once the root starts resorbing. So there is nothing much that you can do with when you over obturated with zinc oxide eugenol. But as I said, it is a learning curve. So slowly and gradually you are going to get to that point where you will understand how much pressure you have to apply for the material to reach till the apex. And as I said it again and again, that it is okay if you are 1 mm short of apex. There is no harm in going, if your obturation is 1 mm short, it is also considered as a very good and an ideal, near ideal obturation if it is 1 mm short. Now coming to the second question, if the metapex, that is the calcium hydroxide based plus iodoform material, if it goes beyond the apex, the studies have shown that it does not cause any harm to the permanent tooth bud. So it is okay if metapex goes beyond the apex in that aspect. But as I said, again, even if it is metapex, try that it does not go beyond the apex, because it is going to resorb very fast and it is going to resorb the root as well. But the question asked me that whether it causes any discoloration to iodoform. I would say that it does not harm the permanent tooth bud in any way. So it is okay if it goes beyond.
Another question on materials. Can one use Pulpotec for a pulpectomy? And are there any specific tricks in placing endoflass into the canal?
Come again before endoflass. What did you say?
Can one use Pulpotec for pulpectomy?
Pulpotec for pulpectomy. You are
Yeah, for pulpectomy. I think it's usually used for pulpotomy.
for pulpotec. So pulpotec is basically, is it a formocresol based material, or
I think it's an iodoform based material.
an iodoform based? So because
Uh,
generally over here we are more commonly using metapex, vitapex, and diapex, calpex, all these materials. I have never used pulpotec over here. But
so that's just,
if it is a combination of iodoform, then it is safe to use if it is a calcium hydroxide plus iodoform based material. And coming to endofloss, it is almost similar to zinc oxide eugenol, but it also contains iodoform and calcium hydroxide. It is a combination of zinc oxide, calcium hydroxide, and iodoform. Endofloss is said to be one of the most near ideal obturating material, right? So I would say that endofloss is equally good as compared to zinc oxide eugenol. But the advantage of endofloss over zinc oxide eugenol is that if endofloss goes beyond the apex, it is going to resorb and it is not going to harm the permanent tooth bud. So you can always start using endofloss before you use zinc oxide, because endofloss has got that advantage. It is also a hard setting material and it is not going to harm the permanent tooth bud even if it goes beyond the apex. So I forgot to mention that in the presentation. It is a good material, endofloss.
for the triple antibiotic paste, have you come across one that comes pre-mixed, or does one have to literally have to mix with the ratio that you mentioned of 1:1:1?
What the literature says is that you always have to freshly make it 1:1:1. I am not aware of any triple antibiotic combo which is readily available. So in our practice, we generally freshly mix it in 1:1:1. I am not aware if it is available, because I have not come across that. Is my voice clear, Nick? Now?
Yeah, you're very clear.
Okay.
So I think we'll do the last two questions. So the other question again is a clinical one. So what happens once you've done your pulpectomy, everything is fine, but you start noticing resorption, root resorption? Any treatment plan in a primary tooth?
So you
And
so I just repeat the question, that you've done the pulpectomy and in the follow-up visit you see that that there is root resorption, right?
root resorption, yeah.
But there is no other clinical symptom. The patient does not have any pain. There is no abscess, and there is no other radiographical finding. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, assuming
So
they're not
in
symptomatic.
so in such a case, you just have to wait and watch and keep it under follow-up, because the eventually the root is going to resorb once the child turns 8.5 or 9 years. So the physiologic root resorption starts by that age. Plus, as I've shown, a lot of cases where the metapex or vitapex which has gone beyond the apex, it may trigger a foreign body reaction and it accelerates the root resorption. So again, that is a that is a normal phenomenon when the material goes beyond the apex. So if the as you've seen in a lot of my cases, if the root is resolved and the patient is not having any clinical or radiographic this thing symptoms or complaint, then I would advise to just follow up such cases and wait and watch till it exfoliates naturally.
From my observation, sometimes I've noticed teeth that have been done pulpotomy or pulpectomy, you find, well, you get the root resorption, but the permanent tooth also tends to erupt earlier. Have you noticed something similar?
Yeah, because the for pulpectomy treated cases, the evidence also suggests that such cases are going to exfoliate slightly early as compared to naturally if there was no pulpectomy. So for such cases, the permanent teeth is going to erupt at a faster, at an earlier age as compared to, you are right, Nick. In such cases, we have observed that pulpectomy treated teeth are going to exfoliate early as compared to the other tooth where there is no pulpectomy done. You're right. I've observed that.
All right, for the last question, are there any types of crowns that you prefer to use, and do you have a reason why? When you've done pulpectomy, maybe you can explain for posterior teeth and anterior teeth.
So you're asking me the different types of crowns that I prefer
That
using.
you prefer, yeah.
So these. Hello, am I clear?
Yeah, you're clear. We can hear you.
So the crowns, basically, if you're asking me what crowns I use in my practice, is that if it is a molar tooth, basically they will be either a stainless steel crown or a preformed zirconia crown. So if I'm using a stainless steel crown over here, which most of the patients prefer to get it done, and we can do it in a very lesser time as well. So I generally prefer to use the kids crown for stainless steel crown. And if I'm using a preformed zirconia crown, basically I'm using a Indian company by Dr. Mukul, which is a kids E crown. These are for the posterior tooth. So, and if I'm using if we are treating an anterior case, probably I would prefer to use either a strip crown or a preformed zirconia crown, again by Kidzi. So these are my options for. I'm not using a stainless steel crown for anterior teeth nowadays. It is either strip crowns or it is a preformed zirconia crown for anterior tooth after pulpectomy.
Okay, so that's for the last of the questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Shah. That was quite informative, and I think we've all appreciated the complexity that goes behind a pulpectomy, because I think many of us shy away from doing pulpectomy
Yes.
because of either struggling to get the working length, that on a difficult child, struggling to do
Yes.
the obturation. So yeah, so I think you have shared some few pointers that we are all going to take home and improve our practice on pediatric dentistry. So I think this is something that we have all appreciated. A lot of thanks have come from the audience. So yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Shah,
Thank
and
you.
we hope to have you give us another lecture on another topic very soon.
Surely, definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentists, and thank you, Dr. Nick, for having me here.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. I hope all the participants have got these basic points, and they would try to apply that in their practices.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
Thanks a lot.
I hope everyone is better off having attended this lecture. So thank you to all the attendees, the undergraduate students, the postgraduate students, the general dentists, and the pediatric dentists from Kenya and across Africa. We will be having another talk next week, same time on Thursday. The topic for next week will be pediatric sleep disordered breathing. So we hope most of you will join us again. Even Dr. Shah, you're more than welcome to join us. So today's presentation was also aired live on Facebook on our website, Kenya Association of Pediatric Dentists. So if you want a repeat lecture, you can always log in to view it. It will also be uploaded on our website probably by Monday, kapd.or.ke. For those of Kenyans, we will generate CPD points and they'll be fed automatically on your portal. If not, we shall email them to you individually or send them through WhatsApp. So thank you once again for attending. Thank you, Dr. Shah, and to the panelists, Dr. Kere, Dr. June, and Dr. Mwasia. And hopefully we shall see you again next week. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
All right, see you, Doc.
See you. Bye.